The CEO's staff called the black woman just a nanny, until she took down his entire company. The marble floors of the Ellington estate gleamed beneath Naomi's quiet footsteps as she entered the room. Twin chandeliers sparkled overhead, but the air was thick with judgment. Evelyn stood near the grand piano, arms crossed, a file clutched tightly in her manicured hands. Her smile was the kind that never reached the eyes. "You know, I've been watching you," Evelyn said, voice low but sharp. "And something tells me you're not here just to fold laundry and warm bottles." Naomi didn't blink. Her calm was unsettling. Behind her, the Ellington twins sat on the carpet quietly building with blocks, something no one had seen them do in months. They were known for throwing tantrums so violent that 3 nannies had quit within 2 weeks. But not today. Not with Naomi. "I'd like to see your bag," Evelyn added coldly. "Some items from Mrs. Ellington's room are missing." Naomi finally turned her head, her eyes locking with Evelyn's. "No anger, no fear. There are cameras in every hallway," she said, voice soft but steady. "Let's take a look together, shall we?" The room froze. Evelyn shifted uncomfortably, her carefully arranged expression slipping for just a moment. From the top of the staircase, Mr. Ellington's shadow appeared, watching, silent. Something unspoken passed between Naomi and him. It wasn't familiarity, but recognition. A flicker of something deeper. Not romantic, not professional, almost strategic. Naomi turned back to the children, gently patting the head of the boy as he leaned into her side like he had known her forever. No one could explain how quickly the kids had bonded with her, or why the night terrors had stopped. No one could explain why Naomi had taken the job in the first place, especially with her qualifications. Because Naomi Lewis wasn't a woman who needed a nanny job. She had degrees in behavioral psychology, a consulting background, recommendations from people high enough to make a senator blink. But that was not the version of her Evelyn had bothered to Google. Evelyn. Naomi was just another black woman, in a white uniform with a soft voice and a quiet step. The kind who knew her place, the kind who obeyed, only. Naomi didn't come to the Ellington estate to comfort children. She came to burn something down. 3 months earlier, Naomi Lewis stood in a glass conference room at Bexley Tech with a trembling hand gripping her son's inhaler. Jaden had called from the school nurse's office, his voice hoarse, wheezing, scared. The firm's HR manager had told her bluntly, again, that any personal disruptions during work hours would not be tolerated. Naomi had left anyway to be by the time she returned. With Jaden asleep in her arms, her access badge had already been deactivated. Bexley Tech's official reason? Repeated failure to comply with professional standards. Unofficially, she was a black woman in a world that expected her to work twice as hard and never be vulnerable. The next day, Naomi pulled her framed degrees off the wall. MIT, Stanford, all the names that used to open doors. Now, they just stared back like empty promises. IT was not her first time rebuilding. But this time, it felt different. She had Jaden watching. Learning.so when the nanny listing appeared. Anonymous post, urgent need, high pay, no experience required. Naomi hesitated for only a moment. She did not apply to be anyone's nanny. She applied to be inside that house. The Ellington estate was not just a mansion. It was a symbol, a fortress built by one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, Charles Ellington of Ellington and Rowe, the same company where Naomi once interned 6 years ago. Back then, she had delivered an automation prototype that saved them $12 million in logistics. No job offer followed. No thank you. Just silence. Her team lead took the credit. She was never even invited to the meeting where the design was patented. That was where she learned something. Brilliance meant nothing if the right people chose to stay blind. And now, ironically, here she was. Not as an engineer, not as a consultant, but as a nanny. From the moment she walked in, Evelyn had made it clear Naomi was not welcome. Evelyn had run the Ellington household since before Charles's wife passed. Everything from staff rosters to school lunch menus went through her. She considered herself a gatekeeper to the Ellington legacy. Every nanny before Naomi had been driven out within days. Torn schedules, sabotaged trust, whispers in the children's ears. But Naomi came with something Evelyn did not expect: silence. She did not flinch at snide comments. She did not over-explain. She watched. She memorized. She waited. Even the children noticed. "I like her," the little girl had whispered to her twin brother on the second night. She listens. Naomi never asked why their mother's photos were missing from every hallway. She never asked why Charles Ellington only came home after midnight and spoke like he was still on a conference call. She already knew the signs of a home held together by habit, not love, and outside the walls of the estate, Naomi had her own war. Jaden was one of only 3 black students in his private school. He had come home one afternoon in tears after a teacher accused him of cheating because his math work seemed too advanced for a 3rd grader. Naomi did not confront the teacher. She logged it, the same way she logged the suspicious billing flows inside Ellington and Rowe after she ran an automated scan through public procurement data. She never stopped being an engineer. She just changed. Her battlefield SO when Evelyn left the garage door cracked one night, and Naomi spotted the company's internal files still visible on Charles's forgotten tablet. She did not snoop. She studied. What was Naomi really doing here? Why did a woman with her qualifications take a job wiping fingerprints off juice cups? Why was she asking the gardener when the construction crew last came to rebuild the West Wing? Why did she pause at the staircase every night as if listening for something beyond the silence? There were too many questions, but Naomi already had the answers. She was not here for employment. She was here for exposure. Naomi adjusted the angle of the living room camera with careful precision. "It's for everyone's comfort," she said, softly, looking at Charles. "Just in case misunderstandings happen again." Charles nodded without protest. Evelyn, standing behind him with her arms crossed, stiffened. No one had ever suggested such a thing before. Not in this house. Not under Evelyn's watch. From that day on, Naomi's presence shifted. She was still quiet, polite, and warm to the children, but her questions became sharper. More intentional. At breakfast, she asked Charles, "How many employees does Ellington and Rowe have under contract now?" He looked up from his coffee. "Around 12,000. Why?" Naomi just smiled. "That's a big family to manage." Later, she helped the children with homework while asking, "Do you ever visit your father's office? Or see people coming and going there?" The questions seemed innocent, but they were not random, Evelyn noticed. And she hated it. One evening, Jaden came downstairs with his shirt wet. Evelyn stood over him, furious. "Your child spilled juice on the rug. Again. This is the 3rd time." Jaden's lower lip trembled, but before he could speak, Naomi walked in. Her phone was in one hand, a small silver USB drive in the other. Naomi's voice was calm. "I think it's best we let the footage speak." Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes dropped to the USB. She said nothing more and left the room. Jaden looked up at his mother, confused. "You recorded that?" he whispered. Naomi knelt and wiped his face. "Everything." That night, she sat in her room, laptop open, files arranged in careful folders, house logs, staff incidents, board connections, Ellington internal memos. She had been collecting more than footage. She had been building a case. There were documents from her past internship, HR emails from her last job, and hidden in her files, copies of reports Ellington and Rowe had buried, whistleblower claims, unpaid settlements, forced resignations. Naomi knew more than anyone suspected, and she had not taken this nanny job out of desperation. She had taken it to get inside. The cameras Naomi installed quietly became the house's most honest witnesses. In the beginning, it was just little things. Evelyn scolding Leah for asking too many questions. Evelyn blaming Jaden when a plate went missing, only for it to be found minutes later. But then the footage showed more. Evelyn yanking a tablet from Jaden's hands and shouting at him for being slow. Evelyn instructing the cleaning staff to report directly to her instead of Naomi. She even told the cook to serve different meals to the children when Naomi was not around. Less healthy, barely warm. Naomi began quietly saving clips. One evening, after Charles returned from a long business trip, Naomi approached him in the study. "I need to show you something. Just for transparency." She played one of the recordings. Evelyn standing over Leah, voice sharp and cold, saying, "You are not my daughter. Stop following me around." Charles watched in silence, his jaw tightening. But when the clip ended, he leaned back. "Maybe you caught her on a bad day. You know how hard it is managing everything." Naomi did not argue. She just nodded, closed her laptop, and left the room. But inside, Something hardened. She had hoped Charles would take the truth seriously. He had not. It was time to go deeper. That night, Naomi pulled out her old credentials. Her login to the Ellington and Rowe employee network still worked. She scrolled through archived emails, HR files, performance reports, and then she found it.an email chain between Evelyn and two senior VPs at the firm. Subject: Department Diversity Metrics. Evelyn had written, "The optics will shift if we push her forward. We already hit our quota for black interns on the management track." Another replied, "Then stall the promotion. Say she lacks leadership presence. Use soft language." Naomi stared at the screen. Her hands trembled, but not from surprise. From recognition. This was not about another black woman being overlooked. This was about her. A sharp flashback hit her. She had been standing in front of a glass conference room 3 years ago, waiting for the final results. Her test scores had been the highest. Her team had voted her project best in class. Her manager had shaken her hand, but when the final names were announced, hers was not on the list. She had smiled through the disappointment, had nodded politely, had walked away quietly. Now, she knew exactly why. The rejection had never been about merit. It had been about image. Naomi compiled the evidence carefully. She did not want revenge. She wanted accountability. The next morning, Naomi showed Charles the emails that he read them slowly. Once, twice. This cannot be real," he said, his face pale. Naomi met his eyes. "It is." He stood, walking toward the window. For the first time, he looked truly unsure of himself. "I need time to process this," he said softly. But Evelyn sensed the shift. Later that week, Naomi noticed Evelyn whispering to the gardener. Then she overheard Evelyn on the phone. "She is not who she says she is. She is prying into the children's lives, into Charles's work. I think she is dangerous." Naomi knew what was happening. Evelyn was losing control, and she was fighting back the only way she knew how. By turning the narrative, by making Naomi look like the threat. But Naomi was not shaken. She had seen systems bend the truth before. She had been trained to survive them. But this time, she was not just surviving. She was preparing to dismantle them. The dining room was set for elegance. Silver cutlery gleamed, crystal glasses sparkled, and board members from Ellington and Rowe sat in quiet conversation. Naomi stood near the end of the long table, wearing a simple navy dress and holding a small folder close to her side. The children sat calmly beside her, unusually well-behaved, while Evelyn loomed in the corner, visibly tense. Charles raised his glass to begin a toast when Naomi gently cleared her throat. "Before we eat," she said softly, "I believe there is something you all deserve to know." All eyes turned toward her. She stepped forward and placed a single flash drive in front of Charles. "I brought this for you," she said. "It holds the truth about what your company has become, about what your home has become." Evelyn scoffed. "She is a nanny, Charles. Are we really entertaining this?" Naomi's voice remained steady. "I may be a nanny in this house, but I am also a mother, an engineer, and someone who believes that silence helps no one." Charles narrowed his eyes. "What is on it?" Naomi looked him directly in the eye. "Everything. Employee rejection reports, promotion records, secret emails, video clips, audit trails, and conversations recorded with full consent. Mine." Someone at the table laughed nervously, but Naomi continued. "There are emails where senior management, including your head of HR, openly discussed which interns would not be promoted because the board prefers a certain image. There are payroll inconsistencies tied to hush agreements for wrongful terminations. And there are videos of Evelyn here, verbally and emotionally abusing children and manipulating household staff." Evelyn stepped forward, red-faced. "She is lying. This woman has been spying." Charles lifted a hand. "Enough. Sit down." He took the flash drive, plugged it into the nearby laptop, and clicked through folder after folder, each one titled clearly, "Discrimination Logs," "Unfair Rejections," "Household Footage." A silence settled over the room as clips played. The room watched a young black engineer being told, "You're impressive, but we already have one diversity hire." Then another, Evelyn yelling at Jaden for touching a book without permission. More emails. More names. One board member whispered, "My God." Charles looked up. His face had gone pale. His voice, barely audible, broke through the silence. You built this? You kept all of this? Naomi nodded. I only kept what mattered. He looked around the room, at the faces of those who had enabled it all, and then at Naomi, calm but unshaking. I did not know, he said. His voice hollowed. Naomi's response was quiet but piercing. You did not look. Evelyn stood suddenly. You are destroying this family. Charles turned to her. No, you destroyed trust, and you are no longer welcome in this house. She tried to speak, but Naomi simply handed her the same folder she had walked in with. Your severance. Already prepared. Security appeared a moment later, not summoned by Charles, but by Naomi, who had arranged it earlier in quiet anticipation. As Evelyn was escorted out, the children clung to Naomi. Do not go, whispered the youngest girl, her small hand holding Naomi's tightly. Charles's eyes met Naomi's again. He looked away quickly, ashamed. You saved them, he said. And maybe you saved me too. Naomi stood tall, not triumphant, not angry, just resolved. This company has a chance to start again. So does this family. It is up to you what comes next. And with that, the flash drive still open on the screen behind her, she turned toward the hallway. The children followed, no longer guarded by fear, but by trust. In the weeks that followed, Ellington and Roe went through a quiet storm. Charles kept his word. The flash drive Naomi had handed him became the start of a deep and painful reckoning. He launched a full internal audit, not just on hiring practices, but also on boardroom culture, pay gaps, and promotion policies. 3 board members were removed within the first month after it was revealed they had blocked inclusion efforts for years. For the first time in a long while, the halls of the company began to shift. Employees who had been overlooked for years were now being called into real meetings, not to be token listeners, but to speak, to lead. A young black analyst who had once been passed over twice for promotion was now leading a team. A receptionist who had a degree in finance was finally moved into accounting, and people noticed. The culture began to breathe again. Naomi watched it all quietly. One afternoon, Charles invited her to his office. No cameras, no press, just the two of them. I want you to join the leadership team, he said, as vice president of ethics and inclusion. Full control. Build it how you want. Naomi smiled, but shook her head. Thank you, Charles. But no. He looked surprised. Why? She paused, then answered with grace. Because the work I want to do does not belong to one company. It belongs to many. What happened here, it is not rare. It is just finally visible. He nodded, understanding. Naomi stood, handed him a crisp envelope, and added, I used part of my settlement to start something new. A firm that audits companies, just like yours, for racial and structural bias. I will not be in your boardroom, but I will be watching from outside. Charles laughed softly. That sounds about right. She turned to leave, then looked back once. It is not personal, Charles. It is necessary. Back home, Naomi's world was calmer now. Jaden had found his footing again. His teachers called to say he was thriving, asking more questions in class, helping others in science labs, even mentoring younger kids in math. Naomi no longer had to choose between her work and her son. Her new firm gave her flexibility, purpose, and peace. She hired a small team, diverse, passionate, and ready to hold power accountable. Their first client was a tech company in San Francisco. The second was an Ivy League university. As for Charles and Naomi, they stayed in touch, but not out of guilt. Their connection became one of mutual respect. He sent her articles about policy changes. She sent back honest feedback. Their conversations, once shaped by hierarchy, now flowed with truth. And the Ellington children, they did not forget that on Naomi's birthday, she received a drawing from the youngest daughter. It showed Naomi standing tall, with Jaden beside her, holding a rocket, written. In the corner, in a child's careful handwriting, were the words, You taught me what strong means. Not loud, not rich, just brave. Naomi placed it on her desk beside a photo of her and Jaden. She smiled, because finally, the world was changing, and she was helping it change. Months passed and Naomi's firm had already completed audits for 5 companies, each one ending with real changes. Quiet reforms, stronger policies, more diverse leadership. The kind of shifts that did not make headlines, but changed lives. One evening, after tucking Jaden into bed, Naomi sat by the window with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed, an email notification. It was from a name she did not recognize. She opened it slowly. It was from a young mother in Atlanta. The message was simple but raw. I saw your story online. The way you stood up, the way you protected your child, it made me feel like I could breathe again. I work in a place where I am invisible. I am tired. How did you do it? And how can I start? Naomi read it twice. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering everything. The cafe, the accusation, the silence, the fire she had walked through. But she also remembered what came after. She opened her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, with a small smile, she began to type. Let me tell you what they won't teach you in HR. Her words flowed, not polished, not perfect, but real. About how courage does not always roar. About how some battles are won quietly, through documentation, strategy, and community. And about how strength is not measured in titles, but in how you carry your truth when the world tries to deny it. Outside, the night was still. But inside, something had shifted again. Naomi was no longer just a mother, or a former employee, or even a business owner. She had become a voice, a guide, a builder of new paths. Justice is not about burning bridges. It's about building something better in their place.